Speaking of.
Yeah, speaking of moving on. So now we're going to talk Ghostbusters.
Our big topic for the week? Yes.
Let's get into this. Ghostbusters, oh crap, I just had it and it went away. I got so many freaking pages open on my web. Ghostbusters remake of the 1984 Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis classic has hit theaters this weekend with an all-new cast starring Kristen Wiig, Melissa McCarthy, Catherine McKenna, Leslie Jones, and Beefcake Thor, Chris Hemsworth, rebooting the entire series about 3 scientists and a streetwise New Yorker fighting the paranormal. The movie is directed by Paul Feig of Spy, The Heat, and Bridesmaid fame, and was also written by Katie Diploid. So, did you guys see, give me a couple sentences what you felt about the movie, and then we'll move right into it.
I wasn't thrilled. I felt this movie let me down a little bit, but before I talk about that, I really want to point out that as far as reboots go, I thought it did a decent job of calling back to the original movie without beating us over. It was not just a play-by-play remake. It was a reboot. I don't necessarily know that the callbacks were always very well done, but I will say that they were not aggressive or in my face all that much. So for what that's worth, I would say that as a positive.
All right, Andrew, what do you think? Give me a couple sentences on your thumbnail review of Ghostbusters.
The movie wasn't terrible. It wasn't amazing, and I think the movie just in general starts in a no-win scenario. You know, coming out as a reboot of what is generally considered to be one of the most perfect or near perfect comedies ever filmed. Yeah. I think, having said that, I mean, some of that, I think, at least in my case, is it's personal, not the fact that I'm a Ghostbusters fan, but not like an epic Ghostbusters fan. A lot of it was just not my style of comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll have to say I didn't like this. I certainly didn't hate it, but I felt this was about as objectively a bad film as you can make. I thought overall, from top to bottom, there were problems. I thought the performances of all 4 leads, and even Chris Hemsworth, were cartoony, unconvincing, and over the top. I felt the plot, while they did reboot it, just basically retransformed a interesting comedy plot from the 80s into a big, cliched mega blockbuster. It felt terribly out of place. I thought Paul Feig was not the right person to do this. Luckily, he was able to restrain Melissa McCarthy's verbal diarrhea. However, this has to be one of the most poorly directed and edited films I've seen in a good long while. Everything felt very staged, very set up, and very robotic. It didn't have the kind of charm, the down-to-earth charm and grit that the original film had. And in the end, I just don't think it delivered what it was aiming for. And in the end, I was going into this somewhat optimistic, and you guys know, I've been on the record, this movie is going to make serious money.
Mm-hmm.
I might be a little wrong about that. We'll talk about it in a second.
I don't know that you're wrong, but
well, no, I have something on it. But so I would have to just say this was bad, and I think just about as bad. Did I hate it? No, I've certainly hated movies more than this one. But this was bad, and it's certainly disappointing because I think Tracy and I talked about it prior to going on recording. Ghostbusters was a great film. Ghostbusters 2 was a worthy follow-up. The cartoons were worthy add-ons. The video game was a worthy add-on. This is, to me, the first serious dud in the franchise, and it's disappointing. It's more disappointing than anything else.
I have to say, I'd really agree with a lot of what you're saying there, but it starts with, in my opinion, the casting and the director, because Kristen Wiig, I've never liked Kristen Wiig. I don't like her humor. I don't like the way that she performs. Melissa McCarthy more so. She's a little more hit or miss depending on who's directing her and who's writing her screenplay. And Kate McKinnon is the person I like least in Hollywood right now, I think. I don't like her on SNL. I don't like her style of humor. I don't like the way she plays characters. I don't like the sloppy, arms over the back of the chair slouching, I'm basically a disgusting bachelor sort of play. I don't like that. Her lines were fine. It wasn't about her script. It was more about how she plays characters, and it was disgusting.
See,
Yeah.
of the characters in the movie, I actually liked her character the most.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
See,
I thought hers was the most interesting.
Oh,
see, I'm inclined to agree with Tracy on this one, almost 100%. I generally like Kristen Wiig. I thought she was the most talented thing on SNL for years. Very disappointed in
Well,
this kind of.
the years you're talking about that didn't take much. I could have trained a potato to be more entertaining than
No,
most
this is
people on
all this is
SNL.
all true, but I want to give credit where credit is due. I want to come out and just say I was a Kristen Wiig fan. I thought she does a lot of interesting stuff. She was terribly disappointing in this. Melissa McCarthy, who I do like, we have to admit, is a one-note act. What she does is she talks trash for a really long time, and they cut her back in this one, which was good because it saved the movie from being 4 hours
I
long.
was gonna say she played a straight role fairly well, especially during the interview with what was the kid's name? I think of him as Thor
Kevin.
every time I see him. Kevin, that's right.
Kevin,
So
yeah.
when they were doing the interview and she was playing the straight role to Kristen and Kate's just slobbering all over him, I thought she actually did really well
So
there.
And
I've been talking about this a lot with Becky. See, I think nobody played the straight man well, and that the cast needed a straight man. It
That
didn't have
would've
to be the
helped.
same person. So the idea behind the straight man is basically the person who sets up the joke, right? They're like the pitcher. They put the ball in play and someone else hits it.
and
What this felt a lot more like was you had 4 individuals throwing up balls and cracking them out themselves.
yeah, and that's a really good analogy. And I want to just amplify what Tracy said. I thought McKinnon was wretched in this. Thought she was very difficult to watch, and we're sitting there. I wanted to see it with a big audience. I didn't get a chance. I saw it around 11 o'clock Friday night because I had a show, so I didn't get a chance to see a big audience. They kind of liked it. I mean, I think I chuckled twice. The girl was with me. She didn't laugh once at this film, and the audience, there were huge stretches of silence. These jokes
Yeah.
really, really, really fell flat. That's the thing. It just wasn't funny, and then it just got bizarre as it went on and on and on. It just
Yeah.
So
the whole thing with Kevin. I want to talk briefly about that. Was such a strange and unnecessarily stupid character that didn't generate any laughs at all.
I
at least in my
actually I
opinion.
kind of enjoyed that just because I kept thinking of stupid Thor.
You're right.
I can't think of him as I'm sorry. I can't think of Chris Hemsworth as anything but Thor.
Yep.
And so
Same.
it's Thor doing stupid things.
Yeah.
You should have seen In the Heart of the Sea because he was basically Thor, the whaleboat captain. It was really bad.
I have to say that Kurt brought up something really interesting, and he said this was sort of set up as a feminist wet dream. You know, we're redoing a full cast of male characters as a full cast of female comedians, and so I sort of maybe I was missing
Can we-
that, but that's what I felt like was going on in the.
Yeah, can we get to that in just 1 second? Because I want to interpret the film, but I want to talk about it as a movie first.
Okay.
And then we'll get into that because that's where we get into the landmine. I think that's where the minefield is. But I will disagree with Tracy with a little bit. I thought pretty much all the cameos, with the exception of Ernie L's cameo in the film, were really forced and superfluous.
Ernie
and
who?
the guy who was Winston, is that Ernie L's?
Ernie Hudson.
Hudson, I'm sorry. Thinking of a different guy.
That's okay. I called him Eddie Murphy after the movie last night.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I kind of like. I don't know.
I
They weren't
liked
bad.
that
I liked
one.
Annie Potts's.
Yeah, Annie
Yeah.
Potts' was good, and I didn't even recognize Dan Aykroyd. He's.
Well, that's because Dan Aykroyd's gotten really fat.
I was gonna say he gained a lot of weight. I was gonna try to be nice, but he gained a lot of weight. I did not.
No, he's getting a ton of weight.
I was sitting there going, "Huh." I was walking through the cast of the original in my head, like, "Okay, we saw them. Where was Dan Aykroyd? He was the producer." And Kurt goes,
Executive
"He was
producer.
an executive producer." He goes, "He was the taxi cab driver. You didn't say." And I was like,
Yeah, I thought all of that was terrible. I mean, that was just
The only one I thought that was really bad was Sigourney Weaver's.
awful. I mean, she just appears out of nowhere like some sort of ghost, and even the characters are like
Where the
Wait,
fuck
no
did
pun
you come
intended.
the
from?
green
What am I
eating
even-
ghost to me was the worst throwback.
Slimer.
Yes.
No, what I thought was awful was the female Slimer. I was like, really?
Oh,
Are we doing?
yeah.
I thought that was just ridiculous. And was it me or was the golden bust in Colombia early in the film? Was that a bust of Rick Moranis? There's a bust
Oh,
along
if that
the wall.
was-
I know.
I missed
I
it.
recognized.
Because
I know. It was definitely something, but I don't know what.
the girl turned to me and went, "Is that Rick Moranis' bust? Like, is that his face? Is that how they? Because he declined to be in it." And I was like, "The one way they got him in this by just putting a bust of him somewhere in the film."
It was also amusing watching Tywin Lannister as a.
Oh, I thought that was great.
Gosh, that was fantastic.
That was great.
I did
But-
like the first Ghost. I have to say that scene in the house, that was where I really felt, oh, hey, this is actually a reboot. We're not repeating the library. We're not repeating that. It was similar, but it was different
Yeah,
in good
although
ways. And she
in-
looked beautiful.
No, she looked bad.
I liked her.
Yeah, it looked like a video game.
You know,
Well, but
I-
I thought
I
that,
ex-
but the original kind of did. I thought that was the
Yeah, but that
whole
was
point.
1980s. That was the 1980s.
Was it supposed to? Okay, I thought it was supposed to play out as a little cheesy, so I liked it.
No, I mean,
see, that's the thing. I don't know.
I expected more from a Hollywood production than what I see from a video game.
It was $140 million film, which incidentally would have been the exact budget of the first film if they filmed Dan Aykroyd's original script. So that puts that in perspective a little bit. But I agree. For the most part, I thought the Ghost looked okay up until the very end, and things just got ridiculous. And that to me just kind of violated. I mean, the whole part about Ghostbusters is making it this big blockbuster action film, and it was like, we're being different. That's right. You just packed it with action cliches. We've seen all this before. We've also heard all these jokes before. There was really nothing special here.
Yeah.
If you've seen Bridesmaids, you've heard all these jokes.
Yeah,
So
that was the other thing. I felt like I felt a lot of bridesmaid humor in this.
You know, I didn't feel that as much. I felt half the time I couldn't tell if I was watching Ghostbusters or a scary movie-esque parody of Ghostbusters.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
really, the way it was edited made me feel like I was watching a film student movie. That this was a college film. I thought it was so bad in that respect.
See, the editing didn't really stick out to me. I thought Warcraft was way worse than this.
Warcraft was worse, but however, that doesn't make this one good. I mean, was it worse? It was bad, but
it was worse.
But there are parts of this, and I think it's the combination of editing and directing here, where there are scenes, for instance, where Holtzman just appears out of nowhere and is like, we're going to talk about the guns we make, and it was like, where did this come from? And then you get another jump where they're in the camera sets up on the hood of Ecto 1, and they go, are you ready to save New York? And they cheer. It was like, what is this? Another good example is the guy graffitiing the Ghostbusters logo on the subway walls. I thought, how contrived can we get?
That one did stand out to me a little bit.
It was to me, it was just one after another, and I thought the rock concert scene was just the epitome of how bad it could get in terms of the way.
I thought that could have been set. If that had been set up better, it would have been nice. Honestly, I liked the look of that scene pretty well.
Honestly, it didn't feel much like a heavy metal concert, but other
It didn't.
than that,
no, it really did. And then it was like
other than that, it was just like I mean, like, honestly, I don't know that this movie. Part of the problem I think we're having with this movie is how good the original is. Honestly, I think.
Yeah.
And I mean, this movie kind of came out in an almost no-win scenario, where that no matter how good it was, and I'm not saying it is anywhere near as good as it could be, but no matter how good it is, it's still not going to be the original, and it's still not going. People are still going to crap on it because of it not being that good.
That's a very fair assessment.
But it's true. However, I think two things can be true at the same time.
No, certainly.
Everything Andrew said can be true.
The movie
and
can also have
also
problems.
Be really bad, and I think that was the issue. And I
don't think it's really bad, but certainly I think there are issues.
I understand. And I'll say my bias up front. I watched the first two Ghostbusters as an adolescent almost religiously, right? I mean, weekly I would put them on. As a teenager, I could quote them almost perfectly, and I kind of outgrew them. And the girl and I had an opportunity to watch a table reading of the Ghostbusters script down here in South Park. And so it was just local comedians reading the script, and we got to really just hear the script as it was written, and it's a phenomenally well-written script. It is just so good, especially when you just listen to it and don't see it,
Mm-hmm.
it sinks in with how good it is. So it is thankless to, I think, reboot something that has been considered a classic for now going on over 30 years. And again, it goes back to the original point I think a lot of people made when this was announced was why no one wants this, and we're rebooting it with a completely new cast, and we'll get into the political implications of it. I would have actually been okay with if this new film if it were a Ghostbusters 3 and they set it in the same universe, because in the original idea of the movie, the Ghostbusters were supposed to be like a public utility or a public service group, that they were
Hmm.
like cops. That
Or
was
like,
the original idea.
or like a franchise. I've also heard
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So if they had done that with Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson and Murray as the original characters, keeping it all continuity, I would have actually been okay with this. But this kind of we're gonna try it again and do better or do different. It was like why we're not. No
Yeah.
one really was asking for this. But let's get into it. You were talking, Tracy, about how people felt walking out of it, the interpretation of the film. What were you gonna say there?
Well, for that, I went into it because I felt that it had been marketed on top of the comedy as a little bit of a girl power film. Again, we're recasting all of this four-person male comedic team as female comedic team, and so
Which I would like to point out, there was a lot of outcry over when the cast was announced,
there was a lot.
Oh, definitely.
A
There's no
lot.
doubt.
and a lot of it was not necessarily deserved. It was very very virulent.
Yeah. So I would say that, and this was, I have to give credit where credit is due. Kurt came up with this. I did not come up with it. But he pointed out that everything good that this female team was given to them. They didn't really earn a whole lot in this movie. And a couple of the points would be that they weren't able to go get their own car. They borrowed it from an uncle. They didn't get the firehouse that was given to them at the end. I thought that was a very interesting setup, given that some of the premise was that this was a girl team, and that they sort of played up the idea that these girls had sort of been bullied and picked on and so forth, and then they ended up, just pursuing their passions, pursuing their dreams.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'd go that far. I mean, certain things were given to them, but those are really kind of ancillary to the plot of the movie. Yeah, I mean, the car is kind of a classic, Ghostbusters bit of a visual.
Sure.
But beyond that, I mean, I really don't think. I don't think that had anything. It's more about them saving New York, saving the world, than it is about them getting the car.
Yeah, that's true.
That's kind of the point, though. If you go back to the original, you remember the firehouse had all these problems. They fixed it up themselves. Echo One, you remember they get Echo One. Dan Aykroyd just goes down the litany of things that are wrong with it, and they fix it up. What was beautiful to me about the Ghostbusters film, and there's a good YouTube video and podcast on specifically one episode on the Ghostbusters, is it's about entrepreneurship and taking risks and going out there and providing a service when other people can't, and getting messed with by the government in many cases in the original. And in this one, it just became an action film. And I think
there was some of that. I mean, they still have to find a place for themselves to work out of. They've got to make their own equipment. They are harassed by the government, not to the same extent that.
No, not just. I don't think it's near, and that's why I want to piggyback on what Tracy said. It wasn't nearly the focal point the way it was in the original as it was in this one. And not only that, yeah, the girls had a lot. I mean, I don't know if I would say they were handed to them, but every other male character in this film were either doofuses working against them or like evil.
Yeah. Well, and the evil guy also sort of felt like the geek fanboy.
Yes, I'm glad you
Very
pointed that
much
out.
so.
it was
Especially his
like-
little monologue to them right before he electrocutes himself.
Oh yes, I completely agree with it. It was almost like they knew they wanted to make the villain the stereotype of the person they think would not want this film to be made.
Yes, I kind of got that same impression.
Yes, I walked away with that feeling too.
I can see that. That didn't strike me at all, but I can.
Oh, I that was one of the things I thought about while watching it.
I see. I mean, to me, like, again, I can see what you're saying. However, that kind of weirdo, sniveling kind of character is so prevalent all over the place that that didn't jump out to me.
All over the place in the franchise?
No, in film in general, that kind of weirdo, loner, sniveling kind of character.
That apparently has been alive for like 100 years.
No.
Oh, I didn't catch that. But
No.
no, I mean,
In the
I
old
would.
photograph?
That wasn't an old photograph. That was a photograph on their website of their staff.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I misunderstood that. Even the ley
Yeah.
lines thing was so just
Yeah, but
odd.
here's
They
the.
just kind of came up
I
with it.
want to double back on what Andrew just said. Yeah, the sniveling weird character has been a trope in Hollywood forever. I can't think of a film where that character has been a genocidal maniac trying to destroy the world. I mean, maybe Kick-Ass, but I mean, especially in the context of this film, it felt far more deliberate than in the context of other films.
Well, and again, I'm not saying it's not. It's not. I'm saying that didn't jump out to me because that character is such a trope.
Oh, sure. I mean,
You know
it's
who
definitely a
was-
trope.
Who was genuinely funny though out of the guys in this was Benny. He actually made me chuckle a couple of times.
It's
The-
it's Dopinder from Deadpool.
Yes.
The cab driver.
Yes,
The stuff that happened to Benny.
I felt, and he delivered his lines really, really well. Some of the stuff that the wonton running gag throughout the film was actually fairly funny, and then at the very end, delivering like so many wontons, that I giggled at that one. So that was pretty funny.
Also Benny's bike getting blown up.
Oh yes,
Where
that's
he just
right.
kind of looks at it like, "Come on."
Yeah, I mean, I get. The only thing that made me chuckle once or twice was actually Kristen Wiig's fawning over Chris Hemsworth. I
Really?
thought, yeah, I thought there were like
Oh.
one or two parts where it did make me laugh, where they're pulling Kevin out of the hotel lobby or something, and she's like, "Good God, he's dumber than a box of rocks. What is he made of them?" And Christian, "No, he's made of pure muscle and tight skin." Like, I thought that made me like chuckle once, but that was about it. The Dopinder stuff kind of flew by me as stupid, and
See, I mean, like, there are definitely times throughout the movie I laughed, but I think it wasn't as consistent. You know, they would follow. It'd be something I thought was really funny, and then they would follow it up with something where I go, "What the fuck was that?"
usually an awful jump cut and a setup to another scene. Like, hey, let's just go to the alley. And I'm sitting there going, there are no alleys like that in Manhattan. They just don't exist. I'm sitting there going, this is awful. There's no alleys like that in Manhattan.
Otherwise, we would have been blacked out drunk in a couple of them.
Oh, yeah, we would have fallen asleep. In the
We would have
comforter.
found those.
Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I would say it's worthy of Redbox. It's not necessarily worthy of a place on your shelf.
No, certainly not. So let's talk. I had a prediction going all the way back to when Andrew and I did the summer previews for the movies of
I
2016.
think it was in January.
Yeah, I forgot when
It was
did
early.
But I had been saying that movie will make money. They're promoting the hell out of it, and the audiences that I saw it with were really into it. Now, I saw it at late night on a Friday night, but I didn't take into account that Finding Dory and Secret Life of Pets were coming out. Because Finding Dory, this is off Box Office Mojo, dated today, Finding Dory has now become the highest grossing animated release all time domestically.
Whoa.
Right, and Secret Life of Pets is predicted to be #1 for the second weekend in a row with an estimated $50.5 million.
I haven't seen that yet, but the trailer was hilarious. I definitely want to see that in theaters. Secret Life of Pets.
So now they're predicting that Ghostbusters will
40-ish million.
about 46 million according to Box Office Mojo. This is the largest domestic opening for both director Paul Feig and is it Feig or Fig?
Vague, I
don't
think.
care.
Feig, yeah, and Melissa McCarthy. Attention now will turn to the film's future prospect, mostly due to how well Feig and McCarthy films have performed beyond their opening weekend. So if you and the Box Office Mojo article goes through a number of the McCarthy Feig films, some where they teamed up, some where they were separate, and how well they've done, and they go through it fairly detailed, and basically more realistically, we're probably looking at a domestic run around 135 to 145 million. Ghostbusters carries a $144 million budget net after tax, incentives, and rebates, and they go on to explain that how it's fared with audiences. Internationally, Ghostbusters has received 19.1 million from the three major territories, along with a few smaller markets. Blah 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 blah, and talking about how they've done in places like the UK, 6.1 million from the UK, opening on the 11th, 3.7 million from Australia, 2.2 in Brazil, uh, and opening in Germany and France. Let's see here, Russia and Italy on the 28th, Germany in August 4th, France August 10th, Mexico and Spain August 12th, and Japan.
Now you
August 9th.
guys
What about
mentioned
China?
that. Yeah,
It's
that's
not
the big
China's
one.
not mentioned.
I wonder if
China-
they're even going to allow it because they censor stuff. So
I don't know.
Yeah, but they tend to. Well, they tend to censor pieces out of movies,
Oh,
and because China's become such a big market, studios tend to acquiesce. Well, I don't know, say acquiesce to the Chinese government requests,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll make little changes.
oh, I see. So their release is slightly different.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
film we see is slightly different than the film the Chinese will see frequently.
Okay, that makes sense. But I was going to say, I mean, coming from your Warhammer discussion, sometimes China is the difference
I mean,
between a movie.
Warcraft.
Warcraft, yes. Sometimes China makes the difference between a movie that just breaks even and a movie that actually makes money. Do you think this is going to make money? I mean, that was
See,
your
I think-
prediction.
So you were saying earlier your audience was not particularly responsive. I think ours was.
Relatively so.
I mean, it wasn't like
they
I've
like
certainly-
Leslie Jones.
I've certainly
they really
seen-
liked Patty.
I've certainly seen more responsive audience,
Well,
hands
again-
down. But I think we had a pretty responsive audience.
I want to be fair. Again, mine was an 11 p.m. Friday night show.
I mean,
So
ours
it's a-
was 8:30 on a Saturday.
yeah. So mine was a fairly small group. It was fairly very small.
We had a pretty full theater. Although, admittedly, like again, we've been going to one of the theaters that's got the big, comfy reclining seats. So realistically, it's got a little less than I think half of the capacity of a normal theater.
Yeah, I mean, I think mine. So that's why I don't want to judge the responses to my audience. When I judged the responses to the trailer, I was seeing big movies on opening weekend with full theaters, loving that. So, the theater I saw it in, there were maybe 20 or 30 of us in there, and it was pretty quiet. I don't think that's a fair.
I suspect that it's obviously it's not going to break any box office records. I think it'll have a decent run though. I think it's going to turn into one of those movies where people are like, oh, did you go see it? No, I haven't seen it yet. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, hey, you want to go see it? Sure, let's go see it. I think it'll have some longevity to it, which will help it out.
We will see. So basically, they're saying this is going to come up to around 135 to 145 million domestically, which
That's not
would-
bad.
right, but with a $144 million budget, that's not good either, because it depends on how much the theaters take from that, and that's always different depending on the film and the deal it's made with the theaters.
Also the week.
Right. So usually, for instance, when Attack of the Clones came out, I remember that the studio got 100% of the opening weekend tickets, and then it slowly went in the direction of the theaters as it went on. I don't know what the deal is they made with the theaters this time. It could be 50-50 and then slowly increase in favor of the theaters as the weeks progress, or be more favorable in the direction of the studios as the weeks progress. I don't know how that's lined up. So, roughly speaking, you can usually cut the domestic in half, and that's how much they actually made. So if you add marketing, and you add their budget, and you add all this other stuff, distribution, they may just barely break even, which would surprise me. I was wrong. My prediction was this would be a big hit. It would turn a profit, and they would get a sequel out of it. And
Do you think they won't get a sequel out of it? They've definitely set one up.
No, I think they'll still get a sequel out of
That's
it.
what I
I think
We might-
regardless.
we might get a sequel, but
The sequel might
You
be
know,
better than the
hang on,
original.
as much as we've talked about Sony being desperate for a franchise,
mhm.
I think anything that comes anywhere close to having something like that, they're going to jump all over.
Yeah, I mean, they could be. Well, $40 million openings aren't what they used to be. Remember, and I'm reminded of Tron Legacy getting a $40 million opening a couple of years ago, and they never were able to generate enough interest for another sequel. So that's a possibility. I'm still inclined to think we're going to get another one. But it doesn't seem to be it doesn't seem like it's going to be the hit that I thought it was going to be. If I thought we were going to see a $200, $300 million film, and we're doesn't look like we're getting near that.